to Life at 40. Today's podcast is with Craig. Sorry, you joined me walking the black beast that it's been. Hang on. Yes, today's guest is Craig. We go back 10, 15 years. We've had similar life experiences and I hope you enjoy hearing about some of them. I'll speak to you at the end. First question, how did you feel about turning 40?
Turning 40 as an age, I didn't really overthink, and I felt the same with 30 also. 30 was a bit more of a landmark birthday for me because I'd met my wife at 29, was engaged just before 30 and had my first son at 30, so 30 was far more of a landmark in my life. 40 kind of came and went, but we was mid-COVID, mid-pandemic. So the world was in a funny place too.
Well, your 40th was fun. It was on a boat.
We wasn't a boat.
Definitely had its ups and downs.
But even in the month that we had the boat party, there was talk of shutdowns and all of the like.
I mean, for me, it was. I'm still the same. I'm still 30, still the same person. Nothing's really changed.
Yeah, like I say, 30. I had big life events happening around the age of 30, so definitely felt a change around 30, coming out of my 20s into my 30s. Going from 30s into 40s, less so, but definitely as time has gone on, I'm far more comfortable with who I am and my outlook on things as I'm getting older.
So no silly life crisis, like midlife crisis. Arguably, my idea to do this was probably led by a midlife crisis for me. Mm-hmm. The realisation that, well, as we briefly spoke about before, the classic one is a stag do. My stag do, quite fun to do it, but suddenly realising I'm not as young as I probably once was.
Well, certainly on your stag, I think I was I already 40? I was either not far off or just
September, wasn't it? So it was just before.
A couple of months later. But obviously the Friday night, which was the big nightclub night.
Yeah.
It was very clear very quickly that we were different to everyone else within the building.
I think we were probably 15 years older than anyone else in there, easily.
Yeah, comfortably.
And
treated as such. Behaved far worse, far younger, and not been thrown out, and was definitely viewed.
I was having a little snooze and got thrown out.
Sure, but you was having a snooze because you maybe enjoyed yourself a bit too much before getting.
It had been a good time. I think that pays into the sort of not realising how old you really are there, because we still went out thinking, yeah, we can still drink like we did, smash and put down drinks, still act like we did when we were in our 20s. I mean, we went out in our 20s. We would go out on a Wednesday night. It's that lovely, wonderful club. With Chicago's back in the day, Jumping Jacks or whatever it's called back in the day. All those places we
3 or 4 times a week on the regular.
Get up, 2 hours sleep, get up, off we go.
And obviously physically, drinking like that or living your life like that has an effect. But I would say mentally now, I'm still in the same place I was probably when we first met each other nearly 20 years ago, and still feel like a younger man than I am actually, and still feel like I'm in my 20s mentally a lot, particularly having the boys who are almost 9 and 11.
I think I found out my mental age is probably nearer my children's as well.
Yeah.
Zara definitely outstrips me when I'm thinking.
But Vicky, like Zara, is probably emotionally matured and continues to get a bit more sensible, a bit older as time progresses. I would say my mental age is probably already peaked and is going backwards. And
well, as I say, it's downhill from now. Is what they
I
say.
think so. 40 generally is a landmark, I think, in particularly men's lives. And just recently, I've obviously had my MOT check, as it was called, a few ailments, which you speak to your GP about, and then one thing leads to another, and
Yeah.
it's blood tests, and actually you've got one issue, another issue, all linked to how you've lived your life and your diet and the way you consume things. And 40 seems to be the natural break-in. I mean, it's like, obviously you're at the midway point between probably halfway through your adult life, really.
Well, obviously I'm a little bit over 40 now, come up to 42. I mean, I turned 40 and talking about health, I was offered a prostate test for the first time in my life because I've hit that magic number and it's suddenly, oh, you're in the at-risk category, let's have a check. It's an eye-opener.
I've managed to swerve that one, thankfully.
Oh, it's coming, don't worry. How do you feel your outlook on life has changed, and how do you deal with life? How do you feel your past has helped you deal with stuff now? I mean, I know you've had challenges in early years, well, probably the last 10 years there's been quite a few challenges, not employment through to
Lots.
the big one that we briefly touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Which is how we really became friends, actually.
Yeah. Obviously, we've both got daughters from our, let's say, first relationships, who have both become stepdaughters to our now wives.
Yeah.
Both almost identical ages, and their lives, like ours, have mirrored each other as we've gone. So they've both started and finished secondary school together. Both started college, albeit one of them, mine, now has dropped out of college. But yeah, lots of symmetry. Probably linked to feeling more comfortable with myself as I'm getting older.
Confident. I mean, you've always been confident. I mean, I definitely feel like I'm more confident now, and I don't know if you thought this. I often feel, I wish I'd had the confidence I have now and the less craps to give that I have now. When I was 20
Yeah.
to now, I might have, we both got at the nose, but there'll be a boss that would rip money off for us, and we would just be naive enough to not notice it for what it was, the hours we'd work.
Yeah.
Now you wouldn't stand.
We've got the benefit of a bit of wisdom with age now. At that point, and with hindsight, no doubt we were taken advantage of because we were young and enthusiastic, and he could.
24-hour shifts. I'm pretty sure I pulled a couple of those.
At least a few. But talking of confidence, I have always been confident with myself. But a younger me was probably more bravado and false confidence, and about putting on a show and giving the perception that you're more confident than you are. Whereas it's probably gone full circle now, and being a little bit older, I feel far more confident with myself, but I'm far less willing to put myself out there and show myself to be confident.
Do you feel men are notorious for hiding things?
I'm
and not
the
saying
world's-
anything, not
I'm
really
the world's
training
worst.
for suck it up, just deal with it.
I'm the world's worst for that. My obviously I was part of a single parent family growing up largely. My dad left when I was 7 or 8, so my mum largely raised us, but she too was a bit of a damaged soul, shall we say. She took on a lot of responsibility from quite a young age.
But didn't open up, tried to show the strong face, tried to be,
She always tried to be mum and dad in the house.
try and hide her
So
real
probably-
emotions when she's angry, sort of thing.
Unknowingly took on a lot of her traits, and she was very much a closed shell. She had her own issues with her growing up and her parents, so would shell up, would not really talk, wouldn't share things. My sister's a bit more open. She obviously now works in mental health.
I remember the first time I met your sister, so
Yeah,
she pretty much sat there, light in my face, clipboard out.
yeah. So by design, she's a bit more open naturally. But weirdly, probably with Vicky, my wife, I'm more closed with her than with most people, and
Is that just don't want to worry her? Or?
I think some of it is probably like a macho thing, and quite an old school view that you should
Just deal
be
with
the breadwinner, deal with it, be a pillar of strength. Obviously, Vicky's had lots of health issues, as you
Yes.
know. So she was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago.
So you're trying to be strong to help
Yeah.
her out, not burden her with the pressure.
And certainly when she was going for all of her treatment, the impact on me was quite large too, being her husband and being the person that was closest to her. But wanting to shield her from...
So you take the extra burden on you, just
Yeah, a lot.
I mean,
And there was regular times, obviously I was working in London Bridge,
yeah.
and you were working just up the road at the time, so we were travelling occasionally, but regularly in the car on the way to or from the train station, as it was, because I was going in from
Yeah.
Burnt Oak, just from near where you were.
That wonderful parking space that we found,
Yeah.
no charge.
But regularly from my house to Burnt Oak, more so from my house to Burnt Oak, but occasionally from Burnt Oak to home would be my half an hour in the car, time to myself. But my mind would race and I would think about things and process things, and emotions would get the better of me sometimes, but would largely deal with them and process them on my own as opposed to speak or talk to other people.
But I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, my biggest issue is that I will bottle things up a little bit. I'll like, okay, I'll let that slide. That's annoying me, but I'll let that slide. And I'll explode at something ridiculously little. And then shut off again and then make it 10 times worse by gone 2 days before now and not said a word to Zara, who's actually, for me, been trying to open up with more now, and is actually a good soundboard, and I've got better, and by no means am I perfect, she'd say I'm still terrible. But
I mean, similarly, I definitely am guilty of bottling thoughts, opinions and emotions, but then similar to you, it builds and it builds and it builds, and then something brings it out. It could be, we don't row often, but Vicky and I would have a row and everything would come out in the wash.
something for 6 months, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, everything, and then every
Both of you are
frustration.
just as guilty of it. I mean,
And she's
from
very-
my side, it's the same.
And yeah, Vicky and I are very similar in that way. She too is a bit of a bottler, I'm too a bit of a bottler, and we don't really talk. And obviously we had our marital problems, nearly 10 years ago? We were only married a year or two. Both had marriage counselling, both joint and singularly, and both got far more out of single counselling.
Just talk to us.
Just, me with a counsellor and then her with a counsellor. We both got far more out of singly talking than we ever did combined, because when we were combined, it would generally result in us disagreeing.
Knocking heads against each other.
And we're both very stubborn, which is fair to say.
I have to say I've opened up more than I have done in the past, but I still bottle things up now. And men being men, we are terrible. Like, we're the world's worst. Really, do you know what I could do? Talk to them, pick that phone up and just you've got a minute. Very rare have I ever done that. I mean, and I should do it.
Yeah, when there's very few people in my life that I would open up to or have open conversations with, not because it's a deliberately done thing or consciously because I've closed off. There's very few people, there's probably 3 or 4 people in the world that I would open up to, and it would always come through natural conversation as opposed to a call for help and a picking up a phone. I do believe everyone has so much going on in their own lives.
So you need to be burdened by your own.
Yeah, not really. And as I've got older, the circle that I have around me has got smaller and smaller and smaller. So certainly there are friends that have come and gone, people that were best friends or very close to me that I've now not spoke to or seen for years and years. Again, not by design really, but people are busy, or I'm sure if you bumped into everyone would be civil. There's never been a fallout.
Oh, no.
But the inner circle that I have around me is very, very small. It involves Vicky and her family, and then 2 or 3 very close friends.
At the age you do, you slowly learn who you need around you and who you'll put the effort in and actually will, even if it is 3, 4 months so, but you know, I'll see it in 4 months, we'll pick up where we were last time and it'll be 5. You'll have a good laugh. That's fine, but you'll find people you're not too fussed about, you won't even bother. I made a decision early on, well, not early off, but midway, we used to work together, I think 8 years at a time, and I decided this isn't for me, it's not what I want to do. And I made the move, and you've made the move, changed the direction of your career. It's still vaguely related to the catering, but you've moved to another side of it, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
You're out of the real hardcore living
I
retail side?
I made a conscious decision to move. Again, around the age of 30, I reached a bit of a crossroads in my life at 30. Maybe slightly before, where I didn't want to do the crazy silly hours that we did. I didn't want to work in hotels, corporate, evenings, weekends, all of the time. I wanted to have somebody at home, have my own family, because I never really had the family of my own. And as my boys particularly have been babies and then toddlers
Kids, the
and grown
experience
up.
of having kids changes it and forces it.
And again, obviously, we've both had daughters who weren't living with us and then were
I
living
was
with
going
us.
to say, the elephant in the room we haven't brought up is the fact that we both became full-time parents very much later than we were parents in our 20s and then mid-30s. Well, how long has it been now? It's been 10 years for me and about the same, not far off the same for you, isn't it, with Luce?
What's that?
As in when she came to you full-time?
She was 10. She was just 10, so she was in year 6.
So, I mean,
9, 10, yeah.
to use an example there, we've gone from both being the horrible phrase of part-time dads, but we were doing crazy hours, seeing the kid range. We know we've got the girls this weekend, we'd do things together and that, because that's how we'd work. And then suddenly, everything's dropped. Your daughter needs you take them on and you have to just go with it. I don't know if I could have done that in my 20s.
No, possibly not. Obviously, my situation was slightly different to yours in that I didn't know about Lucy at birth.
No.
And so I was 24 and then found out about her in an instant when she was already 18 months.
I do remember the conversation.
Yeah. When you talk about landmark events in your life, rather than it being, well, I turned 40, I think differently now, I turned 30. 24, obviously found out at Lucy, I had my car accident.
Yeah.
And without consciously making any decisions on my lifestyle or how I wanted to be different, those two things are probably the two single biggest impacts on my life. Both happened within 3 months of each other, ironically. Having no child to then a nearly 2-year-old toddler. Then also the car accident where obviously
That's all we
you saw, which you saw almost firsthand.
Yeah.
Altered my perspective and my approach
Well,
to everything,
I'd
really.
say actually for the car accident, we probably wouldn't. Well, I think that it's definitely that 6-month period after that is where we really. Made friends, but I had not much sleep during that period. We were gaming until 6 o'clock in the morning.
And you find solace and comfort in silly things. It just so happened that was
What worked?
what happened. But at 24, I definitely went from being, I would say probably, I was quite immature and young. But then after 24, almost grew up instantaneously. And even in my work, and profession and my job career, naturally carried myself a bit differently. Was then a dad too, so had extra responsibilities. So 24 was when I would say I probably started to become a man.
What has life experiences taught you? But we've sort of gone over that a little bit, and having experience having kids young. I left the army because Sophie's on the way. I left the army for that reason, because I didn't want to not see her. Then Sophie coming to me meant I had to just drop all my go to the gym, just going out onto the range of things that would drop out. Suddenly I had to focus everything. The school run was the most important thing. Make sure I finished work and drive like a lunatic to pick her up in time. Anything I did, I had to make sure she was sorted out first. Someone actually was more important than you for once.
Well, Lucy very similarly didn't have the benefit of a very stable or strong home background or mum. So constantly felt the responsibility to try to compensate for that too, to make sure she was safe, she was looked after, she had everything she needed. Either from a welfare perspective, heating, food, drink, put carpets on her mum's house to make sure she didn't hurt her feet.
Stock the fridge.
new
I've been doing that a
clothes.
few times.
She turned up to my house on more than one occasion in clothes that were too young for her, and were squeezed in, hadn't eaten properly, dirty school, like all sorts of welfare issues.
Yeah.
And does have a tendency to make you grow up quick, without a doubt. I think more so than the boys, because the boys, I'd already met Vicky, we was engaged, we'd kind of already committed to each other, albeit not married at that point. And she fell pregnant with Finley fairly early on in our relationship, but both knew early on that it was, if not forever, at the risk of being cheesy, it was going somewhere.
Yeah. What would you tell your 20-year-old self now, thinking of what you know now?
I mean, Finley is 11 in a few weeks, but is fast becoming a young man, and so I've had similar conversations with him already.
I've had a conversation very similarly
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
And clearly there are repercussions from certain actions,
Yeah.
and use a bit more foresight probably, and act a bit more responsibly, because as much as you should live in the moment and live for the now, some decisions do shape your life
Completely.
like forevermore. I mean, 20-year-old me would never have listened to 40-year-old me saying, now act more responsibly, take more caution.
Pensions. What's that? Don't worry about them.
All of that. And actually, my father-in-law Ray, he's 72. His biggest bit of advice to me is pension. Plan for your future. Plan for what's to come.
It's the sort of now is when we're looking at this, when really we should have done it
Probably
20 years ago.
Probably already too late to give yourself.
A proper nest egg.
Probably. But it's easy to say, 40-year-old me would talking to 20-year-old me would say, be more responsible, think about your future, think about when you're retired, think about what you're doing with this girl, because the repercussions could be this. 20-year-old me wouldn't have listened.
No.
So my advice is probably irrelevant.
I think for me there would have been small. It would have been, listen, remember the sex education class you had back at school? Pay attention to it, because the repercussions are real. It's not just STDs.
Yeah, but even now, as a more mature adult or 40-year-old, people that say X, Y, or Z, you always think, oh, it never happened to me. Vicky with a cancer, Lucy being 18 months, and people being in similar situations.
Yeah.
I would always look on them and think, oh, that would never be me. And even now at 40, I always think, that would never be me. Just all my health scares recently, the same thing. Oh, that would never be me. Until it's reality and it's
It is me.
it can be very, very easily, and have been through and seen a lot of that sort of stuff now, and always just thought I was going to have a very black and white life.
Average
really.
Joe life.
Yeah.
I'm just nothing's going to happen.
No,
to me.
the picture that's been painted of my life is very, very different and way more colourful than I ever
We're done.
Kidney struggles. So back to the whole wisdom thing where we started. Find myself increasingly talking to Finley from like a father-son perspective, trying to pass on wisdom, things that he might want to take on board somewhat. Just recently, he struggles with two boys in his class in particular, and he's quite negative in the way that he views things and he approaches things. I am and always have been really a big believer in positive mindset.
You're always generally a positive one.
Approaching things positively, thinking about if you think good things will happen, and that's probably, if I had a mantra, that is the one I would probably subscribe to the most and try to believe in the most. That if you think
half
positive,
full, not half empty.
yeah, if you think positively, positive things happen. Always try to see the good in things. Sometimes that's harder than others, but I believe that. And I've said that to Finley, and can see he's taken a bigger board. Me and Finley have a very different relationship to what I ever had with either of my parents, and does take things on board, and he does put that into his everyday life within the last week since we've had the chat.
Oh, to any degree, the boys are both. Obviously, I haven't seen them for a couple of months, but they are. I see them. They're spitting images of you in many ways, and the mannerism and that is you all over. So you've done a good job there.
I mean, Finley has my interest and my personality. George, unfortunately, has my immaturity and my sense of humour.
Yes, and why is the immaturity there? As all our kids can play, we all do annoying things to embarrass them.
But then, contrastly, they both definitely have traits of Vicky's also. Vicky obviously has struggled academically with dyslexia and everything. George picked up that trait.
Thankfully, George is at the point now where it's not as big a problem as it once was, and there will be support for him, and he can push through
That's
it.
good.
I've done all right with dyslexia.
You have?
Can't say the word.
Got your own podcast now.
Well, thank you for coming and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
It's been fun. We've got a thumbs up for that one, Soph, as well. Who dropped it? Was it you? Did you drop something?